Study buddies, welcome to Abroad Sex Education, where we discuss everything you wish you learned in school. I'm your host and your walking green flag, Cin, and today my co-host is Asa.
You are a walking green flag,
For you,
at least for me.
only for you. This podcast is a sex education resource intended for an adult audience. We'll be having real, inclusive conversations on topics like gender, sexuality, pleasure, relationships, and more. Some topics may be considered explicit or sensitive. Our goal is to break the stigma and provide the kind of sex education many of us never got. We're learning too, and we're bringing what we learned straight to the classroom so we can all grow together. You deserve to know what this is about so you can make an informed choice to listen. Or not. That's what consent looks like, even here. Asa and I have a lot going on. We have a lot of birthdays and life celebrations and just a lot of social things that are happening lately that make it a little bit more difficult for me to do heavy research-based lessons. So today we're going to be doing something different. And so for this study break, we're going to be talking about values, red flags, and what actually matters in dating.
Sounds good. I'm ready for it.
All right.
I think we need to start with the definition of like what a red flag is.
A red flag is a non-negotiable thing that you do not want in a future partner. Like if they had this, I don't want anything to do with that person ever.
Do all red flags come from just like you innately know? Like I don't want to date someone who, I don't know, has a different religion than I do? Or do they have to be learned from prior relationships?
I think it could be both. I think when people say red flags, most of the time they mean things they have learned from past relationships or what they saw in other people's relationship that they realize they don't want in their future relationship.
Right. You wouldn't know how to identify it if you hadn't seen it, either experience it yourself or in a close relationship to you.
Yeah. Or they can be things that fundamentally you find important. Like, it's important for me to date someone that believes women should have rights.
Mm-hmm. They should. It's really not that hard.
I think you have to realize what you value as a person. So for me, I care a lot about social issues. I care about people and how people treat each other. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to find red flags that align with those initial values. So again, like I don't want someone closed-minded because the ability to see things from another person's perspective and grow, I think, is a really admirable trait.
Right. Yeah, it definitely sounds to me like, broadly speaking, red flags are things that you learn from prior experiences or exposure that you have determined, you have reflected on and have determined, this is a no-go for me. Mm-hmm. And it may not be a no-go for somebody else, but you have to kind of make that list yourself.
For yourself, yes.
About what things are a non-starter.
Yeah. So, Asa hasn't really dated much. He's only dated 2.5 people. He doesn't count the half, but I'm adding half. There was a rebound situationship in between. But I've dated a lot, and I feel like I learned to refine this green flags, red flags list over time.
Yeah, I think I'm coming at this out of curiosity, probably mostly because to me, the entire process of dating and like what I typically think of dating is just, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of outcome that is worthwhile to me. And I don't really feel driven, and maybe it's my sexuality, I don't really know, but I don't really feel driven and never have felt driven to just date around and try dating people, to seek out someone who is going to actively fill the partnership space. That just hasn't been how I approach my life. So it's really interesting to talk about red flags and things like that, because I feel like if you're wired like me, you don't really, like in all of my past relationships and current relationship, it was the other person who entered into my life and made their presence known and then told me that they liked me in some way. And then I was like, oh, all right. And I started paying attention, right? Versus I feel like dating is, and evaluating based on flags, is you defining traits that you are particularly seeking not to have in your life, right? And so
Yeah.
when you're scrolling through the endless swath of, faces on the app, you're determining and making a judgment of like, oh, well, this person has XYZ, hard pass. Like, not even gonna even attempt that, you know? But it sounds like it's more than just like hardline, just like immediate X on somebody. I guess swipe. I don't know which way you swipe to say
Left.
no. Left is no. Okay, so what immediate left is? It's not just like the immediate swipe left. It's like even once you start dating or once you start talking to a person, you realize they have a behavior or a trait that you're just not for, and could also be a red flag.
Yeah. For the listeners who have not listened to a previous episode, Asa identifies as,
Demisexual.
which means that
I don't remember the actual formal definition, but I don't feel love.
no,
I don't feel.
an emotional connection has to happen first for you to become attracted to someone.
Right.
You're not looking at a person on the street being like, wow, she's a hottie with a body. Let me go talk to her. You're
Right.
someone that's like, oh, that person looks pleasant.
Yes.
And then fucks off with the rest of their day.
The idea of me, like, asking somebody on the street for a number, it like is entirely foreign to me. I would never do that with the intention of like
taking them on a date.
Yeah, because to me that just feels like such a disconnect from like how you. I don't know anything about this person. They don't know anything about me. Like, I'm just some random dude. And I realize that that is not how all people are wired,
You just experience attraction differently than other people.
Right, right. I didn't used to think that. I used to think that, like, I just didn't care, It's different. So when it comes to, like, red flags and things, it's the evaluation process of, like, possible matches that when you are dating or when you are looking for a person, or even if you're in a relationship and you figure out that they have something that really just doesn't go well with you.
Mm-hmm. I think in previous relationships, I think when you're younger, there's like a common joke on the internet that like when you're in your 20s, you only care about someone's height and how much money they make and how good they look, versus when you're older and you have more years of dating under your belt, you're able to call out specifically what you do and don't like about a person. But I have had my fair share of relationships that I saw the red flags or knew that the red flags were there and then didn't do anything about it. My first longest relationship, there were obviously the alcoholism was there, and that was like a red flag. And I don't think that was a situation where there was like a limerence where like I really liked him and wanted to be with him. I stayed in that because of the societal belief that when you love someone, you choose that person and you work it out, and love is hard and you work on it. And this is what love is staying even when it's hard, which I think is a lie.
Yeah.
Now I know that it shouldn't be hard with the person.
It's not solely about committing and casting aside your own values or opportunities.
Yeah. It should be hard because of life that happens and you navigating that together. It's not because it's hard with the person that you're with,
Right.
Versus like the last relationship that I was in prior to our relationship, that was like a full-on limerence thing where like even though I knew he was terrible for me in all the possible ways, I really liked him, so I wanted to stay. And that's why my best friend was just like, I was so mad at you the entire time you dated him, to the point where I kept talking about it with my therapist, and it was really affecting my mental health because of how mad I was at you dating this person.
Yeah.
So
isn't that so interesting though? Like it's so relative, right, to each person's perspective and angle.
Yeah.
Like you could be totally head over heels for somebody, and somebody else can just be like rolling their eyes, like, what is wrong with this person? Like they're
They
terrible.
suck.
Yeah.
Why do you like him so much? They suck.
That's why I think it's so interesting, the like red flag stuff, because it's so subjective, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you said that you over like many dates, you know, with different people were able to kind of build your list of criteria of like, well, this is a no-go. Like I'm not even touching that at all. But I feel like you kind of have to build that for yourself. You can't really, like you can hear what somebody else says and then it can make you consider or reflect about it. But I think really you have to kind of come to that list of your own conclusion. Like,
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be the only person that lives with that list, with
right, yeah,
the person that ends up being the one you choose.
right.
So,
What do you think was some of the first things that you put on that quote unquote list? Like, what are the first things that you really identified as like, this is not acceptable for me?
alcoholism or like any substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
addiction, that's a mental health problem. People who are suffering from alcoholism and addiction should seek treatment and get help. And I do think more societal structures should help people in those situations. I'm just saying, for who I am as a person, I am a very committed and loving person that like I don't like to give up on people. And I feel like being in a relationship with someone that has an addiction is tough because it's always going to be present, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
I even had trouble even afterwards dating people that were like recovering
Mm-hmm.
because that like trauma that I experienced in the relationship of like always feeling like I was being lied to and
Right.
that like they're gonna relapse and all of that stuff was
It's
just
too
like
much.
too much anxiety on my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that.
I think I was able to determine what I liked in a partner versus like the
You
things that
also
were.
have, I mean, you base it off of your judge of a person's character. And I know that you tend to make pretty good judges of people's characters. And
Mhm.
so, like, I think that depending on how well you are at doing that, that can probably help or swing which direction you're going in terms of people.
Yeah. I don't like it when people lie. I went on a date with a guy once who said he was 5'7", but when we got on the date, he was my height, which I'm about like 5'4". And I wasn't upset that he was shorter because he was a nice guy and it was an okay conversation. I was more of the set about the fact that he lied because
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to lie about this, what are you going to be willing to lie about in other situations where you feel pressured?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this isn't even like a high pressure situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just dating.
Right, right. I think when I was a young man, I had a problem with lying. It wasn't really like with relationships because I wasn't dating anyone at that time, but I would just like do, I would say more than white lies in little social situations and like testing the waters to see how it would work, you know? And I think that it is like a habit that can be very hard to break.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can understand like even just something as slight as the height difference, right? It expresses a fact that by nothing else, you've shown that you are insecure about something to the point that you're willing to mask it or to change your information or whatever, which is a bummer. It stinks for you. But if you're not willing to date an insecure person, then maybe that's not an okay thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that like willingness to bend the truth is a really, really obvious red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that was something that you experienced a lot in dating? Because I think about like dating profiles a lot, right? And like people who say like, oh, well, whatever information is on there is kind of all you have to work off of. Do people commonly lie about their information, you think?
When people date, there's a tendency to put the best version of you out there, you know? And I think when you date with that intention, you're dating to find someone versus if you show up more authentically, then you're dating to find the right person for you.
I see. Like you're just trying to fill the void by finding somebody who will like you.
Yeah. And I think that was what made this relationship different than any other relationship I had because the nature of how we met, which is as friends, I only ever acted like myself in every situation that we've had
Right.
versus this predetermined
A time and
meetup,
place. We're gonna meet and we're gonna.
decide if we like each other.
Yeah.
So in those instances and on a date, I'm able to tailor the version of myself that I think you would like.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went on our first date, I don't necessarily think I did that, but I definitely think there were things about me and conversations that I knew you would think are important to have that we would talk about. But I think that's different than actually being like,
Yeah.
oh, I know this guy likes
Right.
this, so I should highlight this about myself. Like, he seems like he's
Yeah.
someone that does XYZ, and let me highlight this about myself
Mm.
so he can see why we would be a good match or
Right.
whatever.
Right. I do think there's definitely a difference between listing out core traits or values or beliefs and getting them out of the way right away and
Mm-hmm.
making sure the other person can agree with that or not,
Mm-hmm.
versus trying to say things that specifically target the person, like tailoring like what you say, like, oh, well, I know this person likes pickleball, so I'm gonna talk about how I really like pickleball,
I played the pickleball one time.
Right. Yeah. Like that, it definitely seems really ancillary.
Yeah.
Personally, I think back about like our first date and think about how we did talk about that kind of stuff. About there was a very conscious effort being made on your end to, this is my list of like core values and thoughts, and like, I don't want kids. I want to travel. I want to have a social friend group. I want you to have a social friend group. Like, it was like very like clear, concrete, like bite-sized pieces of information that like then I can react to immediately, rather than, I don't know, like I feel like my perception of dating apps and the process by which people meet other people is like this slow, meandering path where you slowly obtain this information and like piece this information out from somebody, and then you decide, all right, well, after that, now I've finally gotten the answer that you don't want kids, so I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also just a very direct person.
You are.
I'm a very
Yeah.
direct communicator. I don't like to waste time.
Right. Yeah.
Like on a dating app, I would try to figure out if a guy wanted kids pretty early because I knew that's not something that I wanted. By the time we dated, I had already decided I was never going to go back on the apps, and that I was like, I'm okay at this point. Like, if I end up just being single for the rest of my life, I'm going to have done so many other things. I'm going to accomplish so many other things that I'll still be happy, you know?
Right.
Like,
Right.
a relationship was not important to me
Yeah.
at that point. And so I guess I had decided by that point that I'm not going to get into anything unless it's going to be endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to be very upfront and straightforward and be like, this is what's important to me. This is how I plan to live my life. And if you are not comfortable with that, then it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I want from my life and what I want from a relationship and what I want from a partner. And if these don't work for you, then I am not that person for you, and that's fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fascinating. Like, I think that, like, when you really analyze the little social interactions that take place, right? Like, as someone who has not really dated, right? It's really bizarre to me to think of all of the trial and error that could happen in meeting up with people and then not wanting to pursue time with them, or texting people and not wanting to like have anything else to do with them, right? Like, there's just so many layers to where you could learn, right? Like, oh, well, this interaction that I had, I did not like this. And then I can reflect on that and think, well, there was a specific thing that happened in that exchange that I did not appreciate or vibe with or whatever. And now I'll add that to my profile of like what I think I'm looking for in a future person.
Right.
But that requires you to have access to all of these exchanges, right?
Right.
In order to date. Like, you have to date in order to find somebody, but not because the person that you're dating is the person that you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like you have to have the experience of like bad relationships in order to know.
What you want in the relationship that you want for the future.
Right.
So I've had to learn how to read emotions and social situations very, very well. And that's why I think I put a lot of weight in seeing how people would respond to questions that had to do with things that I valued.
Yeah.
Because it would tell me a lot. Like, all of my girly pops, every time they're dating someone, I always tell them to ask the person, who's the most important woman in your life? And why are they important to you?
Mm-hmm.
And the question tells me a lot about how they treat women in their life, how they perceive women in their life, and how they may perceive and treat me in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guarantee you, I don't remember if you asked me
I
this or
did
not.
ask you
You
that
did? I
question.
probably would have said my
You
mom.
did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And when you talked about your mom, it was like I distinctly remember because you were talking about how like she's just a person that knows what she wanted to do and then just does it.
Right.
That's why, like, it was you admiring the things that she was passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I know you admire people who are super passionate.
Yeah.
That to
Yeah.
you is like it. I think that's your like you gravitate towards people who are very passionate about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's a good question because it makes you think about people in their life,
In
right?
this day and age, it's an amazing question.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's polls showing that men are growing a lot more conservative
Mm-hmm.
and women are getting more liberal.
Right.
And so there's these clash on views because of that divide that's happening now. I think that question is more important now more than ever. Granted, if you want to be a housewife and that's what you want to do, pop off. That's great. I love that for you. Be a housewife, have all the babies. If that's what you want and that's your life, like that's great. The only apprehension I have with that lifestyle is just the fact that there's very few men who want that lifestyle, but will also treat their partner as an equal partner.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, the men who want that type of dynamic with a woman want it because they want to be in control over someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because it asks, I mean, you can learn a lot from somebody's answer, right? Because, like, I guess if they said something about, like, I don't know, they said their boss or something, I guess it depends less about what person it is and more about how that relationship is.
It's about the why you value that person.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, who it is could be also important too. It gives you so much information. But
Did that ever happen? Did you ever use that?
no, by the time
Asking that.
when I got to a point in life where I've learned to like decenter men and focus on myself and completely go off the dating apps and stuff like that, I was not in a position where I was dating where I was asking men these questions. I mean, I asked you and you're the that worked out, so it's fine. But previously I'd never really asked a guy about that because again, this was before I'd gotten to that
You
point
didn't
where I'm
have
just
the
like,
opportunity to think about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You need to know what you value in life and in other people before you can decide what your red flags are going to be.
I never made a formal red flag list of things, but I do remember like when I was going through my divorce, the therapist that I had at that time was basically saying like, when you're thinking about your divorce, pick 3 things that are non-negotiable, right? Pick 3 things that it doesn't matter how things work out, you have to have these 3 things. And I don't even remember what I put at this point, but like that action of the exercise of identifying what those things were was important, right? And it feels like that's something that would apply here as well, of like identifying what your short list of hard line non-negotiables is and starting with that.
Yeah, I think after dating someone for a period of time, at least long enough to make a judgment, it was easy for me to assess like what did I like about this relationship and or person, and then what didn't I like, and those just became like things that are added to the list. I do think it's important that because dating is already tough, the things that you want in a person, like pick 3 things that are non-negotiable things you need to have in a future partner. And those should be your baseline. Because again, it's unrealistic for you to list out like 15 traits and then someone to hit all 15 things.
Every trait you add is narrowing the pool that much more.
Yeah, exactly. So like choose, and I think you could have a larger list of non-negotiables because they could be though again things that are like fundamentally important to you, but they shouldn't be anything that doesn't affect how they'll treat you as a partner. You can't be like, oh, they need to be taller than 5'10".
Is that really how you're going to use your slot?
Yeah, like is that more important than them being a decent and kind person? I love to ask all my girlfriends who value a person's height, I'm like, would you rather date a guy who's shorter than you but treats you amazing, like you are a goddess that's walked the earth, or a guy that's dream height but treats you terribly? And granted, I'm not saying that all tall guys treat you terribly. Is height really a trait that's worth putting on your non-negotiable if it means like you only get 3 slots?
Yeah. There's so many other things
Right.
it could be.
If there's so much more fundamentally important and valuable things that are going to be useful or that will mesh better with you versus how they physically are on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really nuanced too. I think, I mean, we talked about this before, but like every person is a compilation of a series of very unique traits. And like, just because you have a list of traits that you don't like about other people, like that list may not apply to somebody else. Everything's very relative. Everything is extremely relative when you take into account like people's perspectives of things that can be different from yours. And so like, just because you have a list that says, well, I don't want to have anybody that wants kids. Well, maybe it's somebody else that you would have otherwise been a perfect match for, right? Has that particular core value that's very important to them, right? And so it's kind of like you have to really navigate a lot of different layers to find somebody, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember being really frustrated with dating apps because like I was only using them for like 2 weeks or so, but I remember just being very frustrated by the lack of information that people would put on their profiles and just thinking like, wow, there's no, like, what am I supposed to do with this profile? Like, I don't know what to ask you about. I don't have any information to engage with. How do I judge whether or not there's something on here that's like worth talking with, you know? Versus the way I approached it was like, I've dumped a lot of information into the profile to the point where I was probably putting too much information, you know? And like, but my approach was like, well, if somebody sees something in there they don't like, great, and that I haven't wasted any time, you know.
Right.
But I know that that's clearly not the same approach that everybody takes. So.
No. I think that's why our approaches work so well, because you were like, when we first started dating, you were like, I think this person should just know what they need to know about me up front if it works for them or not. And I was very direct and being like, this is what I'm looking for. Like, you were direct in being like, this is who I am. And I was direct about like, this is what I want.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I definitely don't get the impression that that is extremely common, though.
No, no, not at all.
Right.
Literally the night before our first date, you were like, here's some 3 things that people would consider a red flag about me.
Right.
And
Right.
then I was like, well, shit, now I have to come up with things that people would consider red flag things about me.
But I think I genuinely, like, I was talking to a friend about this just earlier this week. I think that reflecting on that and identifying, like, okay, no person is perfect. Every person has flaws. Every person
Yeah.
is crazy in some weird way. Like,
Let's not use the word crazy.
no, I stand by it. Like, I know I will be perceived as crazy by somebody because of my mannerisms or the way that I act or whatever. Like, and for some reason there is something that I do
That doesn't gel with them.
right. And I think that's okay. But I think that it is important to reflect and identify what are the things that I do that are part of my personality that are not going to change, or my history, right? That are not, I can't do anything about what happened in the past, you know? But like that somebody else might think about that and be like, no way. Like, I'm not even touching that. And I think that that exercise is actually useful because if you identify a behavior that you're like, well, you know what I realize is like in my past relationships, people say that I'm like messy or whatever, right? And you realize that like, well, I don't really want to be messy because I want to be clean. Well, maybe you could work on changing your behavior, right? But if you don't do the exercise to reflect on what your traits are that might be perceived as red flags, how do you know whether you're going to match with somebody or not, right?
I mean, I'm
do
also
you think
of the mindset of the you can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
True. Yeah.
So I do stand by the like, yes, some random person may think my flavor of crazy is not for them, and that's fine. But I think in terms of dating, again, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, you can tell someone something and they're like, all right,
Mm.
okay. I mean it in the sense of them, you telling someone like the worst thing about you and them being like, well, that's what makes you you. And so even though that wasn't a good thing, I love that you have that part of your history or your personality because it's part of what makes you that person.
Mm-hmm.
I think people use that phrase sometimes to justify who they want to be as the right person
Mm.
because of that person's willingness to just accept whatever they said.
Right. Right. Do you think that people have a tendency to write people off based on red flags without communicating that they are red flags to that person?
Yeah, because it's not your problem. If at the end of the day, it's like, I don't think it's your responsibility to change. If there's something you consider a red flag in some person that you're dating, you can mention, like, I just don't think we really are a good fit. And that's fine because someone else could probably really like that thing that you don't like about them.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I, again, haven't really dated all that much, so I don't really know how that works. But I feel like I can compare it to job interviews, right? And like applications and things like that. And I have had the experience where I've submitted an application to a place and they actually told me why they rejected me. And I thought that was the coolest thing because it was like extremely clear. This is the specific skill that you did not have that made you ineligible or that we made us think somewhere else. And then you can act on it and think,
Yeah.
well, do I care enough to change that to learn that skill? No? Okay, that's fine. I'm happy with my skill, what I'm at. So it's just interesting, like, that we don't really do that socially, right?
I
with
mean, I'm not
dating.
going to text a guy being like, I don't think it's going to work out because while I had a lot of fun on the date, it's because I'm funny and I can make myself laugh. And I didn't necessarily think you were that funny, and I didn't think you could bring that level of funniness that I'm looking for.
Right,
Like,
right.
I don't think, like, who does that help? Was just like, oh, I didn't think you were funny.
What, and maybe not behavior, but like, what if it's something that could be as simple as somebody has a political view, right? That they didn't express in their profile, but then you go on a date with them and they've identified they're like extremely independent or something, right? Like, you know, whatever it is. They
Yeah.
have that one politician that nobody likes that they're really hardcore obsessed about that person, right? Is it right to suggest that they put that on their profile? Not to say I don't like that, but that it might be beneficial for you to find someone else who has this trait or this thing for you later over text, like not
I
in
don't
person.
think it's necessary because, I mean, that at the end of the day, dating is figuring out just as much as dating on a dating app is reading the basic information and then deciding whether or not you want to go on a date with them. If you date someone, you meet someone at a bar, you know nothing about them other than the first interaction that you have with them. So I don't necessarily think you should be out there being like, let's talk for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's wrong with you? This thing. I don't think we will match well, and this is what I think is wrong with you. Like, I think that's kind of like an asshole thing to do.
Mm.
People just don't gel well with you sometimes, and that's not to say that they should change something about their personality or that
Yeah.
you should change something about your personality. It just means you guys are two puzzle pieces that do not fit on the same piece. That's
Right.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm just trying to come at it from the angle of someone who I know that there is a loneliness epidemic thing, right? For men, right? And there's that conditioning that happens when you go on a lot of dates or you try to date a lot. But if there isn't clear feedback as to what it is about your personality or your behavior or maybe your actions that's not working, it can be very easy to fall into bad situations, right? And so I'm
Well,
trying to figure out like how do we
if we're going to talk about this, we have to talk about it obviously in a heteronormative straight relationship because most women are not going to feel safe enough to tell a man, this is what's wrong about you.
yeah.
because I matched with a guy on a dating app who was like probably like 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking, I think in his profile he mentioned he was divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And so like during our text conversation, he was just like, yeah, I've been divorced. And then at some point he was like, what about you? And I said, no, I've never been married before. I really value the concept of marriage as people who love each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
So if I'm going to do it, I'm only going to do it one time.
Mm-hmm.
And he got so offended by that he started calling me names and talking down to me because he didn't like that answer. And that was
Yeah.
just me telling someone my opinion
Right,
and that
right.
I only want to get married once.
That's wild. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
So I, I didn't even tell him something was wrong with him or how he led his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he still got offended.
Right.
So I don't expect any women to go around telling men, this is the problem with you.
Mm-hmm.
If a guy was like, oh, so I paid for dinner, so we're going to go to sleep together. And if she's like, no, I didn't have a nice time on this date because you were extremely misogynistic the whole time, he's going to be like, well, you're a bitch. And then walk out and then make a whole big stink about it.
Yeah.
That's a very real and common experience. I can guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My favorite thing to do when I was on the apps, because it was consensual, but I would basically be like, I can judge your dating profile, so like send me a message and I can tell you my opinions on it.
Oh, you put that as a note in your
In my
description.
description, that was
Yeah.
just like, if you want, I can judge your profile.
Mm-hmm.
And I would read these bitches down. I'd be like, this picture's ugly. Like, don't put this. What the fuck? Like, and it would be about very constructive and helpful things. A lot of the guys actually would be like, oh, thanks, that helps. I'd be like, why do you have this picture? You can't see your face. It doesn't compliment your face. Like,
Yeah.
this picture makes you look like an asshole. Like, I was basically being like, this was wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how you're presenting yourself in this way is not in any way attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I was outwardly being like, this is what's wrong with you.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if, I think if somebody had messaged me, I don't think I'm interested in you. I don't want to proceed anywhere. If you're interested in the reasons why, I'm happy to share them. Otherwise, see you later. Bye. Like, I could see somebody saying that, and then me being like, yeah, I want to know why, but somebody else may not want to have anything to do with it.
I think most people would not want to know what you think is wrong with them
Right.
to the point where you don't want to continue having them around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I could be like, I just found you super annoying.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I've been on dates where I genuinely don't feel like we had any sort of
Commonality or
the fact that like they've not asked me one question about myself. You should learn to ask follow-up questions
Right.
just as baseline.
yeah.
And I think that's like, if you tell a guy, like say you went on a date with a straight dude and like he was like, that date was amazing, but like they didn't ask you anything about yourself, or they just talked about themselves the entire time. And if you were to be like, oh, so like if you want to know more about why I don't want to date you anymore, let me know. And they're like, yeah, tell me why. And then be like, you didn't ask me any questions about myself. You'll still just be like, well, you're a bitch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't say I've had the experience, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
I get it. It sucks. It sucks that there are people out there that have no fucking consideration for people.
If you are a woman where that situation has happened to you, where you've been on a dating app or you went with a date on a guy and a guy didn't like something that you had to say, or either you rejected it and they just acted negatively like that, comment in the lesson, because I want to prove that this is a very common reaction that happens. You don't even have to fully share the experience, but if you've experienced it, just say, me too, girl, me too.
I think it's interesting because I definitely have not heard that kind of a response ever from a guy, right? The roles reversed, and we're still talking about heteronormative.
So if women will straight up say they were an asshole to their girlfriends right after having it, it's like, oh, that guy was an asshole.
Yeah.
I think the other argument, maybe if you want to think of it on both sides, is like, there's an expectation that some women tend to have that in heterosexual straight relationships, that men will pay for the dates, pay on the first dates. And there are certain women that really value that. In their mind, they think that means if they're going to pay for this date, that means they will provide and value me.
Mm-hmm.
If you value that, that's great. I'm not saying that I didn't value that much when we dated because we split the bill on the first date,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but that didn't matter to me. So,
I think a lot comes down to their values, right? Like you
yeah.
as a person, right? What do you think? What do you think your current values are? And like you said, you didn't think that that was a particularly high value, important thing, but
Because I don't think the
somebody else might.
first, because so my thing is, I don't want to feel like, I don't want to be put in the position where a man feels like I owe him something just because we went out on a date together. I
Mm-hmm.
think for coming at a point of being like, I could provide for myself, so I want to be able to split it on this like first date. Like that's where I was coming from. That doesn't mean I don't want to be spoiled and like
Cared for.
cared for and provided for
Mm-hmm.
in the future. But I do think there's better ways to assess that than someone paying just on
Mm-hmm.
the first date,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I actually didn't realize that there was as much focus given to that, to the payment like of that. Because I know I've definitely obviously know that like that is a cultural thing about like, oh, like the man pays for like I am aware of that, but I didn't really realize or think about how much women might be analyzing that payment or lack thereof.
I don't think enough women challenge that now. Don't get me wrong. I think providing and taking care of someone is important. But I also think that just as much as I would want you to do that for me, I should be able to do that for you in our lives, you know? And so I think that's such a gendered, patriarchal social norm of like the man pays. I think women now who are strong, independent women, that's the one instance women will be like, but it's important to me that a man pays.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand splitting the bill on our first date wasn't about you trying to like do some bullshit. It was me being like, I'm gonna pay my half. Like, and then you being okay with me doing what I wanted to do.
Like you, as the woman in that situation, had the full capacity to say, I am going to pay my half at this dinner.
Yeah.
And that's an I statement. That's not a, you should pay half. That's not
Yeah.
a, I don't want you to pay all of it, right? I
Yeah.
am going to pay half.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. I've never analyzed that. I've never looked at that. But I can see how that could be like a red flag. Like somebody might come at that with a social value or expectation and evaluate that particularly heavy.
I think especially since we've had conversation with some friends that are on the more like patriarchal masculine side,
Yeah.
the fact that there's an expectation like, well, if I pay for dinner then we should be having sex or we should sleep together. It's not across the board, but sometimes there are some men that feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some women have the tendency to believe like, oh, if he pays for me that shows that he can provide. And there's an idea that like because women put so much effort to like get ready, some women frame it as like, my presence is a gift, so you should value my time and like,
Well, like you should pay because I got ready.
yeah, because I got ready. But that itself is also just a very like backwards belief, because then you can't also get mad at a man for expecting something from you after paying for dinner when you were expecting them to pay for the dinner just because
Before
you
it even
showed
happened.
up. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like it just seems like this game. This is my issue with dating. I don't like the game of it.
Right.
These are what I expect from you. I would rather just cut that shit out and be like, okay, I'll pay for my half and you pay for your half. And then, but that doesn't mean in the future I don't want to be treated like a princess and get gifts and stuff like that. I
Right.
still would like that, but we barely know each other now enough to be for you to like want to spoil me and like do all this
Mhm.
stuff. So
Right. Yeah, that's super interesting. I wonder, does anybody like the dating game? Does anybody enjoy the like
some people do.
teasing? Yeah.
Some people do. I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to think about because you saying, I just want to cut to the chase and be direct and be like, that could be a red flag to someone.
Oh,
right?
1,000%. I'm sure it is.
Like,
I am a very strong willed, direct, and decisive person.
mm-hmm.
And I know that that could clash with certain personalities. Like, I think I am someone, because of all my experiences in life, I am a type of person who likes to have control over a situation to the best of my ability. And for a man that likes to be dominating and masculine in a very traditional way, that clashes. Like, that to them is a red flag. Because I want to have control in this situation, this is me not willing to relinquish that control to someone else.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. I love you. I'm so happy that you are as decisive and strong-willed and direct as you are, because to me that aligns well with what I want from a partnership, right? It's a long-term commitment of focus, like we are going to work on life together. And like to do that, you have to be able to communicate immediately and say like,
Right.
this is how I am now, and this is how I approach this thing now. What's your end of the thing, you know?
Yeah.
And rather than this game of like teasing out little pieces slowly is not my speed.
I think I've also just gotten to a point that, like, I don't like to waste time. Time is the most valuable resource that we have
It's the
in
only
life.
thing you can't get back.
Yeah. So, like, if I'm upset about something, I want to talk to you about it immediately. And even though I've either processed it and then decided to talk to you about it, I've processed it in like 5 minutes and I want to talk to you about it. Or like I start talking to you about it because I want to be able to process it together. Versus like you are someone that has the tendency to want to have more time to reflect. And I admittedly don't necessarily give you that time to reflect because I feel like I make you outwardly reflect in conversation with me
Yeah.
on the very rare occasion that there's something that you want to talk to me about.
Right, right. I think that's valid. I think it's helpful for me though, because it teaches me to be I'm very unopinionated, because I feel like there is so much information that I don't know. How could I ever make a decision about something? And I think that what you do is you are very opinionated, and so you come at it from a point of like, well, this is my opinion. Here it is. I'm going to lay it out. And then it's up to me at that point to meet you at that and decide that, yeah, I agree with what you said and your argument is compelling or whatever. Or to put up a counterpoint about like, well, what about this situation? But that's the thing is like, I think it's good to have that dynamic of, if you had two people who were equally direct but also stubborn, you're not going to get anywhere,
Yeah.
right? It's so relative to how all the facets of this person's personality are, and like you have to bounce off of enough of their personality to understand what the whole thing looks like
Yeah.
before you can make a judgment.
Yeah.
What you need to, as an individual, identify what is really important to you, and then just like even just reflecting it out on your own time to be like, boom, 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 these are my things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick to that. You know, like that. Everything else is a non-starter. You know,
Yeah.
and you can tweak it and adjust it, and like, but you also have to be cognizant that if you make a really long list of non-starters, you're not gonna find anybody that meets all those things.
You have to have your top three non-negotiables of things you need to have in a partner. And then everything else is a nice to have. And then I think you should have your list of deal breakers, and they should be like genuine. Like, I don't want someone that smokes cigarettes
Yeah.
or hard drugs or anything. Like, those are reasonable. Make sure what you're listing as deal breakers aren't things that will affect how they treat you as a person. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but if you're someone that is out in the dating world, from all of my research, because I've read a lot of books about dating and my own personal experience, the things I recommend people do are have your list of your top three non-negotiables, have your list of deal breakers and boundaries, things you're not willing to accept in a relationship or in a partner, and write down the things that you value the most in your life. And then find ways to ask questions while you're dating to get those answers.
That makes sense. Like you have your list and like if you haven't directly talked about one of those items, ask about one of those
Like,
items.
not ask specifically, but there are ways to ask questions that you could that have to do with that.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
like the question, who's the most important woman in your life and why are they important to you? Or another one that I like to ask is, when's the last time you cried? And like, why was it meaningful to you? What was the most reoccurring fight that you've had in a previous relationship, and how did you handle it together?
Yeah.
Because it tells me a lot about like your emotional availability, your ability to handle conflict, how you feel about women, how you would treat me in the future. Like, they're all centered around the things that I value. So like the emotional availability, communication. The
I watched a really interesting video the other day on The Big Think, which is a really cool YouTube video series where they interview experts about philosophy and whatever else. But it was talking about how it's very strange that society doesn't treat love as a skill. We treat it as something that we should inherently know. I know how to love someone or whatever. But you only learn how to love or what it is like to be loved slowly after having experiences that build that. So if you didn't have a loving relationship with your parents, it's very hard for you to find just innately a loving relationship out of the blue, right? Or know what to look like, or know what to look for to find traits that are going to produce that relationship for you. And so when you think about dating, like you have to be kind of intentional about like, I want to develop this skill. I acknowledge that I am not perfect and here are my flaws. And if you're willing to accept that and say, these are my potential flaws, if somebody else does that for you, you look at their flaws and you're like, well, those aren't that bad. You've also learned that that person has done the self-reflection to analyze themselves and decide, there are some things about my traits that other people don't like. And I can't change that, but I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that these are things that people, like you said, like, I'm a strong-willed, direct person. You've done the reflection to analyze yourself to know some people will not like the way that I act, right? And to me, that is more informative because you've done the self-reflection than the trait itself, right? Because you've analyzed whether or not you are going to be a good fit to a broad category of people, and you know what's good and bad for you. And to me, that's a more concise and direct way to get to the heart of the person than any like simple little what woman did you like from your life, Yeah, that's just something that I thought about when you were talking about those questions.
Yeah. I don't think the skill comes from learning to love, because I think love is just like a feeling that you share for another person. But I think expressing it and finding the right person is all skills that we don't value enough. I think as a society, we value the idea of love, the concept of love, and what we believe love is in the like happy, everything's great all the time. I don't think people really know what they mean when they say they want to be in love. Because I do
Yeah.
think that loving someone is different than being in love with someone.
Totally agree.
I could genuinely say, like, I don't think I was in love with any of my previous partners before.
Right.
I'm definitely in love with you, and I know
I'm in
how
love with you
that, and I know how that feeling is different. And
It is a subtle distinction though, because I even like catch myself that like just the other day I was calling our friend and I said like, I love you, right? Like, but I do that because I love people. Like,
Yeah.
I have love for you as
Yeah.
a person.
I
That
have-
is very different from I am in love with you.
Yeah.
Right? That's very different. And I think that the subtlety of that, of like having love and care and respect and having expressing compassion for someone, that's love. Like, that is, I love you, right? Like, it's really cut and dry, right? But being in love with a person is like a bond. It's like a feeling of like, oh, well, you and I are on the same wavelength in the facts that matter to me and you, right? And
Yeah.
I want us to figure it out against all the odds and all the things that are happening outside, right?
Yeah. I also think that you can be in love romantically and then also in love platonically, which I
Mm.
think is like I in love with Winston so much. That is my
Yeah,
son,
okay.
heart outside of my body. And I think like women
Right.
who have kids who've like, given birth and have pregnant, like they're in
Yeah,
love with their kids.
that's a fair point. Yeah, right.
I
Right.
so like I think like, that's why I think that the feeling of love isn't something that a skill that you learn. I think the learning to date and learning to be in a healthy relationship, learning to communicate, learning to navigate people and understand emotions and have
Yeah,
that emotional availability. That is skills we don't learn. And
right.
that is what my family would consider street smarts. And
Hmm.
like growing up in my family, I was not the one that was considered book smart. I am street
Yeah.
smart. And so I think
That's what we should teach. That should be a class in like high school, is like navigating social relationships.
yeah, yeah.
Genuinely, that would be so useful.
It would be, I think it would be more useful now more than ever.
Yeah,
Especially,
totally.
yeah.
So many different reasons for that.
I do think that those skills are needed and they're not learned. And that's one thing that would combat the alleged, not real, non existent male loneliness epidemic. Because it's men who don't have those skills that don't know how to develop them to create a loving and caring and nurturing relationship.
I think that's what's so fascinating to me, right? Is like I earlier we were talking about like how unrealistic it would be to provide someone feedback about how badly their date went, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand what you're saying is like if I went on a date and the guy was an asshole and I wanted to get out of there, I'm definitely not gonna say I had a bad time, like
Right.
into his face. Like, no, fuck no. Of course you're not gonna do that. You're gonna get the hell away and maybe you're gonna just like block him or ghost him and like be in the end of the thing and that's it, right? But I also like to me, like feedback is so important, and like I wish that there was some like a critique form or some bullshit, right? To be like, hey, here's the like 3 traits that I think your actions that you I we suggest that you work on your compassion for people, right? And like even if that's just something that you can kind of like file away in your mind to like reflect on, maybe they won't, you know. But that's the thing is like that those kind of like social feedback loops don't always exist, right?
Yeah, but I also think we have to be honest, and we have to point out the fact that there are just some people out there in the world that don't think anything
Definitely.
is wrong with them.
Totally. Yeah. They're
That will
fully
not see
confident.
therapy.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
like they, and I think those people exist, and I think that this is why I don't think the feedback loop of like why do you not think because it could genuinely just be like I just have a vibe and a feeling
Yeah.
that we are not a good match. I don't know what it is, but there's something in my gut telling me that this is not someone
But
that's
let's drill into that for a little bit, right? Because let's just say that that's a situation and you and I went on a date and I had an innate feeling that I did not like you. I think, Asa, I think that there is value in me figuring that out and writing it out to say, what was it? Like, I have this innate feeling, and maybe I haven't defined it yet, but maybe if I sat with it for 15 minutes to try to parse out what it was about the relationship, I even benefit from that,
it's an
from like a
it,
reflecting activity.
it's only beneficial to you as a reflection. It could be beneficial to the person that's dating. I don't think it's your responsibility as a random person in their life to
Hmm.
provide that information to
Yeah.
them. I just, in terms of a social norm, it just feels weird to be like, this is what I don't like about you. So you should change yourself to so it
Mm,
fits to maybe the person who also doesn't like that about you. But if you date someone that has that same thing, you'll end
yeah.
up changing for them.
That's fair. Yeah.
I don't think you can come at it in a way of being constructive because dating is you dating that person for who they are in that moment, regardless of
Hmm.
whatever, like what the whole day. You love 100% of that person, the good and the bad. So if you're
Yeah.
not willing to take that bad part of that person and still want to date them afterwards,
That's very
then
true.
that's just not your person.
That's very true. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Because I think you have to be focused on what your goal is of this dating exercise. And your goal is potentially find a partner. Potentially. Or like maybe your goal is a short-term relationship
Can
or
I
whatever.
just, my pet peeve with that is like, and this is, I think, what a lot of people struggle with now is I think a lot of people focus on just finding a partner. I don't think a lot of people focus on finding the right partner. I think when you only focus on finding a partner, you're going to find someone that's terrible for you.
Yeah.
And I can say that because that's what I did.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why I stayed with my first boyfriend for so long was just because I was just like, well, I'm in a relationship now. You work it out, you like figure it out. And like, I just didn't want to be single again because I found a partner.
Yeah.
But when you date to only find a partner, you will just stay with that partner even though they're wrong for you. Versus dating with the intention of finding the right partner for you means that you're gonna end up not gelling with everyone else
lot of
except
people.
that person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it may be annoying, this dating world, of being like, no, they don't like me, I don't like them, they don't like me, I don't like them. It's just you
Yeah.
ultimately getting to the point where you're finding the right person for you.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna date, that's why it's important to know what you want and know and reflect and figure it out.
Totally.
Because do you just want to be in a relationship, or do you want to be in love with someone and experience the love that we see on television and movies and write songs about and all of that stuff?
Right. Yeah.
Because I think that's the difference. I think that when you date because you are just looking for a partner, you'll love that person. But I think when you date with intention, you'll be in love with that person.
Yeah.
That's
They are very different.
very different.
Yeah. Super, super interesting.
While we all need to learn the skills to have a loving and caring and amazing relationship, I do think this is also something that you're never going to stop learning. Like, you can be really good. Like, while I do think I'm like a really good communicator and I'm really good at being direct and figuring things out, life will still happen. Challenges will still come your way. So there's just always going to be opportunity to learn in a relationship, an opportunity to learn your partner, learn how you are in a relationship, and learn how you both handle those things. And so find someone that you want to do those things with. You could be poly and find multiple people. That's great. I'm not saying only date one person, date whoever you want, but understand that you are choosing someone to navigate the highs and lows of life with. And if you are not happy with the person that you chose, choose a different one. In general, I think it's just important to know that being in a relationship is not as important as being in the right relationship.
I think that's very insightful.
Yeah. Thanks for taking this study break with me, Bubby.
It was actually a lot of fun. I would love to do more study breaks.
Oh, why? Tired of lessons?
Too much learning. Brooklyn's over here valedictorian every single quiz, and it's just too much. Can't take it.
Have any questions about human sexuality? Submit them to our anonymous form linked in the show notes. Thanks for joining this study break. Make sure to follow Broad Sex Education so you don't miss the next lesson. Your homework? Share this episode with a friend, because the best way to destigmatize sex is to talk about it. And if you're ready for extra credit, grab our free Essential Sex Conversation workbooks by signing up for our newsletter. All right, well, bye everyone.
Bye. See you all next time.
See you next time.